During my upbringing in Central America, I encountered numerous narratives and mythology regarding skinwalkers. Until last week, I regarded them as having minimal value. I have heard that discussing or contemplating them can draw them closer, but I must confide in someone, anyone willing to listen, and refuse to allow others to deem me insane. Allow me to provide some context. I am referred to as Dakota. I am 26 years old and have been raised in the Southern Rockies and the extensive wilderness regions of Colorado, Utah, and Arizona. I have been consistently attracted to outdoor activities such as hiking, climbing, and riding throughout my life. I have been employed as a survival instructor and guide since the age of 19, and I possess considerable expertise in these areas. I remain curious, and these narratives illustrate distinct periods. Last Friday, I took personal time to seek tranquility in the solitude of the countryside. Upon completing my checklist and packing all items, I ensured to inform specific individuals of my destination. After loading my equipment into my vehicle, I ensured that Bear, my large, exceptionally loyal and somewhat protective German Shepherd, was comfortable in the passenger seat. Primarily, he is my friend. He also serves as my adventure companion and sentinel. Shortly after 11 a.m., we proceeded to the newly discovered secret canyon, finally arrived after around 5 hours of traversing the desolate and dusty landscape. After concealing the four-wheeler, I donned my backpack and side-on, a large caliber Desert Eagle. Despite the scarcity of large fauna in this vicinity, I take pleasure in target shooting and firearms, so the potential for overkill is inconsequential. It will do the task and serve as a final measure of protection. I surveyed the neighborhood. We are encircled by dense underbrush and parched vegetation, with a narrow footpath cleared for the four-wheeler behind us and a substantial rock formation ahead, flanked by steep cliffs on either side. On the left side, I navigated around the rocks to access a relatively narrow route behind. I had to remove my rucksack and pull it behind me due to the narrow passage. With frigid, sharp stones pressing against my chest and unstable boulders at my back, I had to make this decision for approximately 20 feet. Bear awaited me with a satisfied expression, his head tilted and a look of mild perplexity, seemingly questioning my difficulties while he navigated effortlessly. The path constricted towards the conclusion, necessitating that I draw in my chest and maneuver my way into the expansive opening among the rocks. My jaw dropped as I surveyed my surroundings after finally emerging from the narrow fissure. The cliff sides encircled me with engravings and ancient cave art. I recognized some symbols from other Native American sites, but many were unfamiliar to me. A significant painting was located near the trail's bend. It depicted a large creature with a head and antlers resembling those of a deer, while possessing a long and slender body. Most peculiar of all, it was bipedal. Such circumstances compel me to regret not having brought my camera or even my iPhone. Fascinated, I departed from the path's entrance and commenced my descent. The abruptness of the drop astonished me, prompting a cautious descent until I encountered the entrance of an unrecognized grotto. I believed that nothing could be enhanced. I placed my rucksack on the ground and took hold of my flashlight. I chose to observe the opening as darkness descended, then prepare for the rest of the evening. I advanced a few feet and abruptly stopped when the floor collapsed completely. My lamp hardly traversed the dim chasm underneath. I retraced my steps to the cave entrance, deeming it more prudent to return during daylight. Bear, who had oddly remained stationary, accompanied me nowhere. I surmised he must be exhausted. I abruptly recognized my own fatigue after a strenuous day. In addition to feeding Bear, I kindled a small fire and completed dinner. After an unsatisfactory dinner, I unfurled my sleeping bag and positioned myself beside the fire, gazing at the far stars visible between the remote rock formations that shielded me from the rest of the world. I fell asleep to the sound of the crackling fire, with Bear peacefully dozing beside me, embodying tranquility. Upon being roused, I drowsily glanced at my watch. The time was around 3:30 in the morning. I cautiously withdrew Bear's head from my vicinity to resume sleep, at which point I observed his bared teeth and low head, assuming a protective stance in the dim firelight. He emitted a deep growl from his throat while gazing at the cave's entrance. Now more vigilant, I clumsily grasped my flashlight and drew my handgun, my finger positioned to disengage the safety. Bear had invested time in learning to be quiet on command, a highly advantageous skill. He ceased movement yet continued to hiss, focused on the dark aperture in the rock. I illuminated the precipice of the drop-off. For several minutes, my firearm was directed with the light, and we listened attentively. All I perceived was quiet, save for the sound of my heartbeat. I then heard it faintly. Although I cannot articulate it precisely, I shall endeavor to do my utmost. It resembled the yowl of a feral cat combined with the bleat of a goat, producing words that were distinctly strange and fragmented. Initially silent, it was accompanied by the noises of clacking and scraping, drawing closer. I narrowed my eyes to locate the boundary within the beam of light. I will never forget what I witnessed next. I am certain it is indelibly etched in my memory. In the light, elongated, decayed fingers with thick black claws encircled the lips and began to pull something upward and into the cave. The creature rose to its feet. Approximately 6 feet in height, it possessed elongated, deer-like legs that were insufficiently robust to sustain its weight, culminating in little hooves that appeared to levitate above the ground. The entity resembled a semi-human form, with exposed ribs, a skeletal structure enveloped in decayed flesh and tattered fur. I desired to flee, however, I was paralyzed by terror and remained fixated. The odor was repugnant. Featuring elongated, curving antlers, a contorted and deformed physique, and extended limbs hanging loosely forward, with claws scraping the earth. Primarily, the disturbing and convoluted amalgamation of human and animal forms produces a countenance so horrifying that it will be vividly etched in my memory until my final day. Certainly. It fixed its empty, decaying sockets upon me, and then I heard the dreadful, contorted words echoing gently around, "Allow me to assist you with that." On 3 occasions, once at point-blank range, I emerged from my immobilized condition, disengaged the safety, and discharged the weapon. The dreadful item before me shifted and was 2 feet to the right in an instant. I continued to fire incessantly. This entity approached to consume my own being, convulsing and contorting in a horrific nightmare. Little of what ensued remains in my memory. The dreadful cacophony of a bear's bark, our frantic pace, the sharp reports of gunfire, the jarring clatter, and the putrid breath onto my neck. I remember the intense sunlight and the roar of the side-by-side as Bear and I sped across the desert. Unscathed upon awakening in our shanty, this incident irrevocably transformed us. This troubled me nightly. I felt compelled to confide in someone, to admonish an individual. Refrain from entering if you encounter such materials or an unnamed cave.